What if the most profound, life-altering advice you will ever hear about following your dreams didn't actually come from a billionaire CEO or a philosopher?
Right, or, some famous self-help guru.
Exactly.
Yeah?
What if it was hiding inside, like a B2 level English vocabulary lesson?
Which is just such a wild place to find life advice, honestly.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, from the time we're kids, society basically hands us these two completely contradictory scripts for how to live.
Oh, the cultural whiplash is incredibly intense.
Yeah, first you get the blockbuster movie script, right? The one that says, follow your dreams no matter what.
Yeah, reach for the stars, don't let anything stop you.
Right. And then usually right around high school graduation, you get handed the second script. And that one is just, be practical, get a stable job, pay your rent, and don't do anything foolish.
We are actively conditioned to dream big while simultaneously being judged on our ability to secure a rock-solid retirement plan. It creates this universal underlying anxiety.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our source material today is an absolute Trojan horse of wisdom. We are doing a deep dive into a transcript from an English language learning channel.
Yeah, and the literal goal of this text is just to teach intermediate English speakers vocabulary words.
Right, words like aspiration, apprehension, and conviction. But in the process of defining these terms, the creators inadvertently deliver this stunningly accurate breakdown of the tug-of-war between the life you actually want and the voice telling you to be sensible.
And looking closely at the actual mechanics of language is what makes this so revealing, I think.
How so?
Well, when you're forced to define a word clearly for someone learning a language, you have to strip away all the cultural cliches. You have to explain the exact emotional mechanism behind the word.
Oh, wow. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, learning the precise definition of a word like apprehension can suddenly hold a mirror up to your entire life trajectory.
So our mission today is to use this linguistic framework to navigate that exact tension. We're going to explore how to tell the difference between genuine, mature wisdom and, well, hidden fear.
Which is a very blurry line for most of us.
Totally. We'll look at how to stay loyal to your aspirations without ruining your financial life or ignoring your responsibilities.
Because telling someone to just follow your dreams sounds incredibly brave out loud, but applying that to a life filled with rent and family expectations is incredibly complicated.
It really is. But before we can even assess whether we should follow a dream or be practical, we have to entirely redefine the word dream.
Right, because the text points out that most of our anxiety actually comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what an aspiration even is.
Yeah, I mean, we usually picture the Hollywood fantasy, right? Like quitting your corporate job in a blaze of glory to become a rock star.
Or dropping everything to move to a Tuscan villa.
Exactly. But the text separates a fantasy from an aspiration, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, I really want to push on that because a fantasy is often about status-like, how you look to other people.
Right.
But an aspiration, which the text defines simply as a strong hope or ambition for the future, is an internal mechanism. It's usually much quieter.
Like a desire for creative freedom, maybe?
So, exactly. Or wanting to do work that feels meaningful. It might just be the desire for a calmer life, where you wake up without that heavy weight of dread on your chest every single morning.
Wait, I have to play devil's advocate here, though. Because shouldn't some dreams actually be killed?
What do you mean?
Well, if my dream at 18 was to be like a touring techno DJ playing in Ibiza, isn't it actually a sign of maturity to let that go by the time I'm 40?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I don't want to walk around feeling like my life is a failure just because I'm not playing to thousands of people at 2 a.m.,
That is a perfect example of confusing the costume with the core.
The costume.
Yeah, the costume of your dream was being a touring DJ. That requires a specific lifestyle, immense luck, and frankly, a tolerance for sleep deprivation that a 40-year-old might not have.
It is very fair.
But the core of that aspiration was likely a desire to move people with music, to curate experiences, or to feel a deep connection to a community.
Oh, I see.
Letting go of the costume is maturity. Letting go of the core aspiration, that is where the damage happens.
That distinction really makes the analogy in our source material hit so much harder.
The window analogy?
Yes. The text visualizes a forgotten aspiration as a window in a room. The window represents that core alignment, your genuine curiosity and energy.
And the window is still there.
Right, the window is still there, the light is still coming through. But as you enter adulthood, you start stacking boxes in front of it.
And the psychology of why we stack those boxes is just fascinating. It isn't malicious, It's an adaptation.
How do you mean?
Well, The human brain only has so much cognitive bandwidth. When you're trying to build a career, maintain relationships, and keep a roof over your head, your brain just prioritizes immediate survival over long-term fulfillment.
So you get a box of financial responsibilities and you stack that up.
Right.
Then a box of sheer exhaustion.
Oh, definitely.
Then a box of other people's expectations.
Right.
And you just stack them higher and higher until the window is completely obscured.
What's fascinating here is that adulthood rarely destroys the window itself. It just buries it under the logistics of survival.
Yeah, the aspiration is no longer the loudest thing in the room.
Exactly. Practicality enters like a serious manager who wasn't invited to the meeting but took over the agenda anyway.
That is such a good way to put it. And the proof that the window is still there is how that suppressed aspiration manages to resurface.
Yes, the source material points out that these buried dreams tap you on the shoulder at the most disrespectful time.
Oh my gosh, yes. Like you're driving somewhere completely mundane or looking at a spreadsheet.
And suddenly you are having an unexpected, profound emotional meltdown in a supermarket parking lot on a random Tuesday.
We've all been there. But why does that happen?
That parking lot breakdown is actually a biological response. When you suppress a core part of your identity, it creates cognitive dissonance.
So your brain is fighting itself.
Basically, your conscious mind is saying, everything is fine, we're safe, we're paying the bills, but your subconscious recognizes that you are entirely disconnected from the things that actually give you energy.
Wow. So the emotional outburst is your brain's alarm system.
Exactly. It's letting you know that the light is still behind those boxes and you are actively suffering from the lack of it.
So for you listening right now, just take a mental inventory. Are you living the life you intentionally chose, or just the life you slowly ended up in? What are the specific boxes you've been stacking in front of your own window?
Recognizing those boxes really leads us to a much deeper psychological question.
Which-
If the window is still there and the alarm system is going off, why do we continue to let the boxes pile up? How do we become so completely detached from our own aspirations?
I think it's because abandoning an aspiration is almost never a singular dramatic event.
Right, it's not like you wake up one day and say, I quit my dreams.
Exactly. It's a slow fade driven by what the language text defines as apprehension.
And this isn't sheer terror, right?
No, apprehension is defined as a quiet, lingering feeling of fear or worry about the future.
Evolutionarily speaking, apprehension is actually a brilliant survival tool. I mean, early humans who were apprehensive about wrestling bushes lived longer than the ones who blindly investigated them.
Sure, that makes sense.
Our brains are hardwired to prefer a known misery to an unknown variable. A known misery like a stable job you absolutely despise feels safe because you can predict the outcome.
This is a guaranteed paycheck.
Exactly. Pursuing an aspiration introduces variables, and the brain interprets variables as a threat to survival.
Which creates a terrible paradox. The text describes how prioritizing short-term comfort, like avoiding the risk, actually manufactures a chronic long-term discomfort.
Yeah, living a life entirely dictated by apprehension is compared to wearing shoes that perfectly fit your feet but never actually feel comfortable.
That is such a visceral image. You can walk in them. To everyone else, they look like perfectly fine shoes.
But with every single step, there is this low-level, exhausting friction. You are surviving, but the friction drains your vitality.
And this mechanism often leads to what the source calls the inherited life.
The inherited life, yes. Through apprehension, we unknowingly absorb the anxieties of our parents or our society.
Like we watch our parents stress about money.
Right, or we absorb cultural messages about what a successful person is supposed to look like. And the mirror neurons in our brain just adopt those fears as our own baseline reality.
So we think we're making our own practical choices, but we are actually just following a blueprint designed by someone else's trauma or societal pressure.
Exactly. You become an accountant who hates math just because your parents lived through a recession and demanded you find something recession-proof.
You spend years trying to become extremely competent at a life you never actually wanted.
You mistake inherited anxiety for personal wisdom.
Okay, I hear all of this, but I need to inject a massive dose of reality here again. There is a highly practical point raised in the material that we really cannot gloss over.
Go for it.
Following your heart is a beautiful sentiment, but my landlord does not accept rent paid in core aspirations.
Right. They want cash.
Yes. Bills are a mathematical reality. Family dependents are a biological reality. Isn't playing it safe often the most responsible thing a person can do?
Oh, absolutely. Caution is frequently a sign of maturity. Delaying gratification to ensure your family has food and shelter is the very definition of responsibility.
So where's the problem?
The danger identified in the text isn't the act of playing it safe. The danger is when a person plays it safe so systematically for so long that they start calling it their personality.
Oh, that is chilling. When I'm just being realistic becomes your entire identity.
Yes. When you start using practicality as an absolute shield against ever feeling vulnerable. And this brings us to one of the most brilliant insights in the text.
Let's hear it.
Fear is highly adaptable. It doesn't always look like a person shivering in a corner biting their nails. Fear often wears a very respectable outfit.
A respectable outfit. I love that. Let's talk about what that outfit looks like.
What do you think it looks like?
It's the person sitting at their desk at 11 p.m. building a gorgeous, color-coded Notion template about how they might start a business 3 years from now.
Yeah.
Rather than making a single messy sales call today.
Oh, exactly. Fear has spreadsheets.
Fear has a 10-year projection. Fear has 12 highly organized, undeniably logical reasons why now is simply the wrong macroeconomic climate to make a change.
And from the outside, wisdom and fear, dressed in a respectable outfit, look completely identical. They both just look like responsibility.
But internally, they feel different.
Completely different. True wisdom and maturity feel steady. They ground you. Fear, dressed as practicality, feels tight. It's restrictive. It constantly requires you to make your world smaller and smaller to avoid feeling exposed.
So imagine someone is listening to this, and the realization hits them. My entire adult life is just fear wearing a respectable outfit.
That's a heavy realization.
It is.
Yeah.
And the immediate, overwhelming instinct is to just flip the table, right? Text your boss, I quit, buy a one-way ticket to a cabin in the woods, and blow the whole thing up.
Which is precisely the impulse the source material warns us to suppress.
Really? Why?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, when an organism feels trapped for too long, any sudden movement looks like a brilliant escape plan. But flipping the table is rarely about bravery.
It's usually just burnout, isn't it? It's an exhausted, desperate desire to relieve the immediate pressure of that tight feeling.
Exactly. Running wildly away from a life that exhausts you is an entirely different mechanism than intentionally building a life that fulfills you.
The former is a reaction. The latter is a strategy.
Precisely. And this introduces the concept of restraint.
Right, the vocabulary lesson frames restraint, not as a weakness or hesitation, but as a highly advanced form of courage.
Moving slowly, banking your money, and testing your ideas quietly on the weekends, that restraint is how you protect your aspiration from being crushed by the immediate reality of your landlord's rent demands.
Restraint is saying, I deeply want this change, but I refuse to execute it from a state of emotional panic.
It is the application of conviction.
I really want to highlight the text's visualization of conviction because it completely reframes how we think about bravery. Society tells us that brave people don't feel fear.
Which is a myth.
Right. But the text argues that having conviction doesn't mean your fear magically evaporates. Fear is a passenger. It is going to stay in the car.
It might even sit in the back seat and loudly complain that the route you're taking is financially unstable and highly risky.
Yeah, waiting until you feel entirely fearless before you act guarantees you'll wait forever.
The neurological fear response will never voluntarily turn itself off when you are doing something new.
The turning point is simply realizing that fear doesn't have to be kicked out of the car. You just have to make absolutely sure that fear is no longer the one driving the car.
Yes. Fear can whine in the back seat all at once, but conviction has its hands on the steering wheel.
That is the core mechanism of transformation. You accept the apprehension, but you revoke its decision-making power.
But, and this is a massive distinction we have to make, how do we tell the difference between healthy restraint and waiting too long?
Oh, that is the million-dollar question, because I have definitely fallen into the trap of preparation mode.
The endless planning phase.
Exactly. You buy the domain name, you design the perfect logo, you research microphones for 6 months, and you take 0 actual steps toward doing the work.
When preparation stops being about acquiring necessary resources and starts being a tool to delay discomfort, you have crossed the line from restraint into hiding.
You're using the planning process as a respectable outfit for your fear.
And that is the exact moment you must finally take the plunge. The text defines taking the plunge as committing to a bold action despite the hesitation.
You don't do it because the spreadsheet finally looks perfect. You do it because the internal friction of staying exactly where you are has finally become more painful than the external risk of moving forward.
The pain of suppression outweighs the fear of failure.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because our source is a language learning text, it doesn't just offer philosophy. It offers a specific linguistic framework to navigate this messy middle ground between blowing up your life and hiding forever.
Language dictates thought. When you have the precise words to label your internal states, you gain control over them.
So what's the concept the text introduces here?
It bridges the gap beautifully by stating that the goal is not instant, radical transformation. The goal is simply loyalty. Do not abandon the dream.
Loyalty to the dream. That phrasing changes everything.
It really does.
It means that sometimes your core aspiration doesn't demand that you quit your job today. Sometimes the dream just needs a quiet, stubborn refusal to forget it completely. Just a whisper of, I see you, I haven't forgotten you.
The text contrasts two vital phrasal verbs to illustrate this: holding back versus working toward.
Holding back is the mechanism of apprehension. Right. Stopping yourself entirely because of fear or external pressure.
Exactly. Whereas working toward implies continuous, incremental motion, regardless of speed.
You can work toward a dream by taking the most microscopic steps, reading one article a week, saving $20 a paycheck into a specific account.
Or practicing a skill for 15 minutes on a Saturday morning. Just making a tiny bit more space in your brain for what actually matters to you.
And those micro actions are critical because they alter your self-perception.
You stop viewing yourself as a victim of your circumstances and start viewing yourself as an active participant in your own life, even if the external results aren't immediately visible.
A dream can become much smaller in its outward expression, but infinitely deeper in its internal meaning.
That is so true.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive exploring the massive friction between the blockbuster movie script of following your dreams and the sobering reality of being a practical adult.
And through the lens of language, we discovered that the conflict is largely based on poor definitions. We mistake loud, status-driven fantasies for our quiet, core aspirations.
We confuse the evolutionary anxiety of apprehension for genuine wisdom. We let fear dress up in spreadsheets and masquerade as maturity.
And we learn that true courage doesn't require fearlessness or dramatic table-flipping exits.
True courage looks like restraint. It looks like putting fear in the back seat, maintaining your conviction, and making slow, loyal progress toward the things that make you feel alive.
Dreams and practicality are not enemies. They are negotiation partners.
Practicality handles the rent, while the dream ensures the person paying the rent is actually still awake inside.
As we conclude, I really want you to consider the broader trajectory of where our society is heading. We spend our lives prioritizing the practical boxes, the stable, sensible, highly logical career paths that promise safety.
Right.
But look at the technological horizon. As AI and automation continue to evolve, those purely logical, spreadsheet-driven, safe jobs are precisely the ones most easily replicated by machines.
The ultimate irony.
It is. In a future where the practical tasks are entirely automated, the only human traits left with any real value will be our unique creativity, our weird passions, and those deeply personal core aspirations we have spent our entire adult lives suppressing.
That is a terrifying and beautiful thought.
Think about the very next box of responsibility you are about to stack in your life. What if, in the very near future, continuing to play it safe and ignoring your internal drive becomes the most fundamentally risky thing you could possibly do? What would happen if, instead of adding a new box today, you simply shifted one slightly to the left, just enough to let a tiny sliver of light